Frank Palangi directs, writes, stars, edits, produces, does the music for, cinematography, wardrobe, makeup, all of it. He does all of that for American Psychopath. Not American Psycho, American Psychopath. You see, it's different. It's a different movie. Okay, American Psychopath. This is a very low budget, a few $1,000s I believe it was, to make this movie. So a micro budget movie, well, about a psychopath. It primarily focuses on this woman who is driving to go and see her father, but she ends up getting lost and breaks down and ends up coming into contact with this killer, this masked killer, who's kind of more like a slasher in a way. And she manages to kind of get away, but she ends up in hospital with no memory. And then we have a variety of other sequences where the killer is ultimately attacking other people, mainly women. What will happen? You will have to watch the movie and find out. So, let's discuss. So, a couple of things before we get started. We do have to bear in mind this is a micro-budget movie, so that obviously is going to limit the production value about what we can expect from this kind of level of movie. I've also gone on record multiple times where I feel when we have one singular filmmaker who is wearing many hats, I generally find it ends up being a little bit of a problem because there's no one to kind of push back on. And we'll come on to why that is an issue with this movie in a little bit. But let's talk about the positives first of all. I do think this is a fairly ambitious movie for such a small, crew and cast of people, and obviously clearly such a kind of a low budget. The movie does try to have a couple of different locations. It's trying to vary up its kind of different types of shots, various kind of cast members. The movie even tries to be a little bit clever in regards to it's somewhat non-linear storytelling. Having things take place in different times and stuff like that with different people. It's a little confusing at times when it does that, but again, it comes down to this sort of ambition, really. I think the serial killer has an interesting kind of look. He kind of looks more like a masked slasher, with a kind of almost a smiley face sort of star mask here. And there's lots of kind of like chatter on the radio about there's this serial killer around, who's actually the voice on the radio is actually the director doing that as well as playing the killer. So there's some interesting ideas here, and again, for such a low budget movie, we've got to say are these professional actors? Probably not. Or not ones with a huge amount of experience and stuff like that. I think some of the acting was okay. I did read a couple of reviews for this one prior to doing mine, and a lot of critiques for the acting, but for such a low budget movie, you're probably not going to get actors who have had a huge amount of experience and stuff. And I didn't think the acting was that bad. I mean, it's not brilliant, don't get me wrong. There are some clunky performances, but generally speaking, for this level of movie, for this budget, I actually didn't think it was too bad. So I do think this movie had some sort of, some things going for it in regards to its ambition, its potential. I think ultimately there could have been an interesting movie had it been like a 15-minute short on an anthology. The movie is not long. It's only about an hour long, thank goodness. But I actually think it would have been more effective had it been edited down further to make it a short for an anthology, and then use that as a stepping stone to then go on and do maybe a feature or something once that's kind of done, and maybe put on some type of anthology somewhere. You know, a better quality, shorter movie, I think would have been the way to go. Because I think that it would have ended up being a little bit more interesting. Because that leads me to what doesn't work. Despite this movie only being 1 hour long, it's actually quite dull. This is, unfortunately, most of this runtime is following this woman wandering around, kind of lost in a daze. Either she's lost getting to her dad's, or when she's kind of she's going into hospital, she can't really remember what's going on, and she's kind of like wandering around other places. And that's basically the movie. Then we get a few kind of shots in between where there's kind of killers stalking various different kind of like people and stuff, and but it's just not very interesting. It's just for such a short running time as it is for a feature, an hour, it ultimately ends up being dull. Partly it's because I think there's nothing really happening in regards to a real narrative here. The way what story there is constructed, I think it really doesn't take the viewer on a journey with it. It's trying to be this kind of like clever movie in regards to, you know, showing this killer doing other kills and stuff, and then kind of splicing that between the story of this woman. But that doesn't really, the kind of the time frame doesn't really feel like it kind of completely fits, because this woman seems to have, her journey seems to take place over a kind of short period of time, and it almost feels like, well, how is this killer getting all over this place? Is this other, you know, is this kind of other kind of in the past, or is it meant to be happening in, you know, it doesn't really kind of flow together. We get really no characterization, to be honest with you. You're kind of more or less kind of thrown straight into it. Because of the real lack of story, there are some scenes here that I just think meander on for just too long, and kind of outstay their welcome and feel a little bit uncomfortable at times, even a little bit like, oh, this is like, the pacing in this movie makes me feel quite cringy because of, I think, probably the lack of experience here, to be honest with you, to make a punchier film. And again, this is why I've said in the past, when we have these low budget kind of filmmakers who want their vision, they don't want to ask for help, they don't want to ask for other people's opinion, like a producer who should turn around and say, this is not commercial, you're thinking purely how you want to do it. You have to think about the audience who have no connection to this film. We're going to go into this blind, and you know, you've got to think of it from their perspective. But sometimes these filmmakers just don't want to do that. I mean, it's probably self-funded, so why should he feel he has to kind of take criticism? But that's why. So, you know, it's ultimately, interestingly, the potential, I think, is there to have a kind of a slasher movie, but the way it's put together, lack of characterization, no real kind of sense of build-up, you know, that we have no kind of idea about the killer or anything like that. He's just some masked dude. You know, we get a little bit of thing on the, oh, why are you doing it? It's such a mysterious kind of killer and stuff on the radio and stuff. But there's a sense of disconnect for us as an audience, because we don't have any connection to the protagonist, or really we're not understanding anything about this kind of killer outside he's just killing people. And then the kills, I mean, unfortunately, again, probably down to like this low budget, it's mostly off screen. The only kind of kill I think we really see is him drowning the woman in like a bowl of water. But that's it. There's no actual kind of like gruesome violence or anything like that in this movie. It's very much just kind of like after the fact and stuff. So you're lacking any kind of real kind of bite here. I think some of the kind of, there are the little story elements that are in this movie, you know, why this killer isn't able to kind of like communicate and stuff, or, you know, the why this woman has lost her memory. It's just not put across very well as to why things are the way they are. I mentioned that I think the acting is okay for this kind of low budget movie, but don't get me wrong, no one's here is going to be like getting any awards for the acting in this movie, and I have to say, again, people say, you know, oh, low budget movies. Yeah, you've got to kind of look at it in context of the budget of the film, but just generally, I think if you know, someone were to watch this who has watched mainstream films, they can think, well, this is so poorly kind of put together on just a kind of like amateurish level in regards to the acting, the aspect ratio, the kind of like the the editing and things like this, it just seems kind of like somewhat sort of inexperienced, perhaps, maybe is the kindest word here. So I think this idea for this film outstrips the actual execution of it, and I think it could be edited down to make for a short, which is maybe where I would have gone with this. Have it on an anthology, it's like a slasher short or something. There's not enough story, even for the meager running time that it is, and ultimately it becomes dull, uninteresting characters, kind of, sort of this muddy sort of cinematography. It's a 3 out of 10. It's probably not going to have many fans, I would suggest, but maybe with more experience we can see where this gentleman goes. 3 out of 10. Have you seen it? Let me know your thoughts, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.